Jumba La Mtwana symbolizes the aspect of a strong man. Mtwana is a strong, dark person.
Inhabitants left this place and we don't know where they really went.
Jumba La Mtwana, a local language in Swahili meaning large house of the slaves. This picturesque village was built in the 14th century and supposedly abandoned in the 15th.
These are some of the settlements that were abandoned by the Swahili. Swahili comes from the word Sahel, which is an Arabic name that names the people living along the Indian Ocean, next to the sea. So Sahel in Arabic means someone living just next to the ocean. And that is where the word Swahili was coined. And you find that along the East African coast, our archaeologists have not been able to finish the excavation of all the settlements because there are so many. And this particular site has been dated 13th century. That means that is the period of time when it was abandoned, which means it would have even started before the 7th century, because the settlement was here, and around 13th century, that is when now the occupants of these settlements started abandoning it. The reasons would be attacks from the Cushitic people who are just in the interior. The other one would be the water turning saline, becoming salty, and so they could not use it. And also the decline of the maritime trade, because at some point the trade declined, and so there was not much trade among the people who were living here, and they had to go now to much higher grounds to settle and even look for more economic activities. But this particular settlement we have had some relations with some slavery activities, because it is just next to the ocean, and it looked like this is where most of the ship or the dhows would dock, and many of the slaves who would be brought in caravans from the interior would be brought in here, maybe housed in some of the rooms, and then taken away by dhows or by boats to Zanzibar, which was one of the central market place during those days. And so the abandoning of this site gives us quite a very big history, because we look at the ruins that are here, and it's like the ruins of over 1,000 people who are living around here. When you talk about 3 mosques, we have the central mosque, one of the small mosques, and the mosque just by the sea. That shows that for all these people to be worshipping in such mosques, then the numbers must have been quite big. And this particular mosque where we are in, you can even see the Qibla, is the mosque next to the ocean, or just by the sea. And this was significant because the seafarers would sometimes stop and pray here, and even sleep, because Muslims believe if you go to any mosque, you can pray and you can even get refuge in that mosque before you go on with your journey. If today, for example, I'm traveling and I reach a place, there's a mosque, I'm very comfortable in that mosque rather than going to anybody else's person.
It's most likely the site's strategic position was selected because of the presence of fresh water and safety. People would escape from external attacks by sea.
Jumba La Mtwana is a Swahili name which translates in English, a big house of slave. So Jumba La Mtwana, first we have to accept, is a puzzle. It is a puzzle because, one, Jumba La Mtwana is associated with slavery, because I've said Jumba La Mtwana is a big house of slave. But the person who did excavation in this place, that is James Kirkman, didn't go further to explain about the slavery itself. So it left there as hanging. What did he or she meaning when he was talking about slave trade? Another thing, why this place is a puzzle, it lacks that written information, what was really happening in those days, because we believe Jumba La Mtwana is an abandoned Swahili settlement dating back as early as 1350s and was only inhabited for a century, and the inhabitants left this place and we don't know where they really went. That is where another puzzling things comes in. And you know, as we always go, written tradition tends to erase the oral tradition. So we are having that challenge. So the only works we are relying here is excavation work done by James Kirkman.
There's a small museum on Swahili culture and a restaurant by the sea, and the custodian gives excellent tours for a small gratuity.
Here I'm standing here is one of the gallery of, we are trying to depict about the Swahili people and the Swahili culture, because we believe Swahili civilization began as early as the 13th century to 17th century, but reached its peak on the 15th century. So what is basically inside this building called our gallery, one of the buildings in Jumba ruins, is that we have tried to document some of the pictorials about the Swahili life and the Swahili culture, from how they built their towns, from how they settled, their lifestyle, their culture. We have tried also to create a puzzle where you can distinguish between who is a real Swahili, because Swahili is one of the cultural ethnic which up to today scholars have never been in that position to tell who clearly a Swahili is. So what is basically captured here is their settlements, their way of living, the economic activity. Yes, that is what basically is along in this room.
The ruins are down a 3-kilometer access road, 2 kilometers north of Mtwapa Creek Bridge.
We welcome as many visitors as possible in Jumba La Mtwana. First, this place has a natural parking. Hakuna ile kusumbuana na kanjo unaambiwa reserved parking. Another thing, security is well guaranteed. We have a good team of security personnel. We follow COVID restrictions. We have a good disaster management team. People are well trained. Another thing, this is a researcher's paradise, because no much information has yet been gained about this place. This place is also a picnic ground. You can have a picnic along the beach, enjoy the scenic beauty. We also have the microclimate about this place, since of the trees we have species. You enjoy that cool environment, and also you'll love to learn the history about what was really happening in this place. So I think for me it's one of the best places you should ever visit when you're along Mtwapa. So it's only a 3-kilometer inward stretch from the Way Bridge in Mtwapa town, and there you have it.
While most of the structures have been lost to time, you can still see the great mosque ruins that overlook the Indian Ocean, tombs and houses, such as House of the Cylinder, House of the Kitchen, House of the Many Pools.
The seafarers who are traversing this Indian Ocean would come here, worship, and you know Muslims normally have 5 times prayers a day. And so maybe in the middle of the day they would come and worship before they go on. Or there could be traders who have come and they have some trade activities with the local people, and they would also use this mosque for their worship. The other mosques we've seen, like the smaller mosque, would also cater for the people around it, which would be maybe a few families that would be there. But you see, the house of the kitchen was mainly used by the women, because that is where they would cook. And normally the Swahili settlements are so civilized that they have sections of courtyards. There are courtyards for men, courtyards for women, where they'll do their laundry, they'll do their cooking, and that is why that big building we saw there was called the House of the Kitchen. The House of the Doors, many doors, was specifically for many smaller rooms, which we look at and say probably there could be some rooms that were used as lodges, where the seafarers would come and do business, could sleep over before they take maybe another route to Zanzibar or to the south. Probably it would have been a house of the Sultan, who would have been the king of this area, and that particular building could have been maybe housing several wives, because Muslims normally believe in 1, 2, 3 to 4 wives. If you're able to maintain them, then it's always good for you to be able to keep them in one particular structure. Now the mosques, of course, like this mosque is quite big, and besides it you'll see there are some cisterns which were storing water for people before they come into the mosque. They do ablution, they take ablution, cleanse themselves before they come to the mosque. And the mosque would be separated into 2. The side at the back would be for women, and the men would be at the front. And the imam would be facing north, which is Makkah. And basically all the mosques would be of the same architectural design, all the way from influences of the Omani Arabs and the Yemeni people. Most of these settlements, we call them Swahili, from the word Sahel, from the word Swahili, where they are the people who are just living next to the ocean. And of course, they were definitely doing that because of the maritime trade that was happening. But the Swahilis could also have slaves. And some of the slaves would be from other tribes, not from their tribe. In fact, most of the Swahilis would feel prestigious. They wouldn't find themselves working for somebody else. They would feel like they were the most prestigious tribe around the coastal strip. And most of the other people who would come and work for them would be from the other tribes. Like these ruins you see here, there are some other people living around them. Okay? And most of them were the Bantus of the coastal strip who would be living around, and they'll be coming to work inside some of these settlements and of course get paid. An example of Fort Jesus, for example, the fort that was built there, many of the local people from Mombasa, the old town, would come and work there, get paid for some food stuff, and then they would join their families later in the day. And so you find that this is a trend that came at some point where the name Mtwana comes in. Like when I go, I'm dark, and if I go to a family of white people, they would call me Mtwana, because I'm different from them, and maybe I come from a different tribe. And so that word Mtwana could signify two things. Either I'm different from them, or secondly, I could be a very strong man who could work for the people around.
A tour of the ruins gives you a unique insight into yesteryear life in a small coastal settlement, as well as a wonderful opportunity to see the historical architecture of the village and its breathtaking setting along the Indian Ocean coastline. I mean, you can almost imagine what it would be like to live here and coexisting with nature.
Here around Jumba we have more than 100 species of different trees. Some are exotic, some are indigenous. By exotic we mean they came along because of one reason or another, maybe because of trade. Indigenous are those which our forefathers planted them. So if you walk around the park, we'll be able to show you we have a very beautiful ecosystems around.
Normally families love this place because it's just next to the sea. There's a nice ambience, and then they can also have picnics here, relax, take their meals if they have carried any. But if they have not carried any meal, there is a restaurant that is called the Monsoon Restaurant. It is owned by one of the Italian people, but he's married to one of the local people. And there's a lot of fish, seafoods that are available, calamari, prawns, and a lot. But normally, like today, I'm told on Mondays they are not present. It's only the other days. So maybe if the families are coming over the weekend, they can always enjoy and get access to that. But there is also one neighbor of the Jumba ruins who is a conservator, and he's very, very good at. I can say he's loving in terms of taking care of the turtles, because this is a breeding area of the turtles, and so whenever they hatch, the young ones are normally endangered because you don't know who will pick them, you don't know why they'll take them or who will step on them, and so there is a very nice organization of how they can hatch them and take care of them and conserve them in terms of, because it's believed that the turtles can travel as far as, very far as India, China, but whenever they come to breed, to hatch, they normally come, they have a breeding ground, and they can always come there even after many, many years.
Clearance and excavation of the ruins were first carried out in 1972 due to the fear and danger of collapse. 10 years later, in 1982, Jumba La Mtwana was gazetted as a national monument. Thus, Jumba is legally protected under the Antiques and Monuments Act, Chapter 215 of the laws of Kenya.
I want those people to come and have an experience of the 100 years back or the 1,000 years behind, the experience of the cultural heritage and what really transpired between the people of the mainland, the people of the next to the sea, that is the Swahili people, and the Indian Ocean maritime trade. And also the natural habitats that we have along among the ruins, because you have so many indigenous species and so many exotic species that are brought in that of course have had an impact among the indigenous species. There's a lot of impact that somebody can really study around here. And also I'd like them to come and see how the climate change has really affected some of our lands next to the ocean. Like right now we have a challenge of really seeing how the sea waves can be stopped, because they're almost coming into the ruins, and at some point they just destroy these ruins and they shall miss this mosque. So there should be a way of either building a wall, but a wall will also affect the turtles that will be breeding. So there has to be a very nice way of being able to conserve the ruins and at the same time conserve the turtles and the fish along the ocean. The community around, of course, they benefit a lot from this economically, because whenever they come and take visitors around, that's an income. And activities along the ruins are also activities of tourism, which also add to the value to the ruins and also to the people around. Like I showed you some of the very prestigious buildings that are around here, which means there is a lot of tourism activities happening. And of course, the people around here are fishermen, many of them. But we can say the benefits that for the locals are quite many, because people around here would come and relax, enjoy the ambience, and even have some picnic and even swim. That is something for the locals, we can say, who can enjoy and own this particular ruins. Yeah. The charges. They are quite subsidized, because you find a child would pay 50 shillings to come in here or 100 shillings for an adult, and that is something that is quite manageable or quite affordable for anyone, for the domestic tourism. But of course for the international visitors it's 400, yeah, for the international, and then for the East Africans it's 200. But there's that stagger in the rates, but they're quite affordable, quite cheap. And so we tell people who want to come to Jumba ruins to come, because it is quite affordable and very friendly.